So, Darryl, thank you very much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But before we walk into the future, can you please tell us a little bit about your own background? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I was born in Johannesburg. I stayed in Johannesburg until the age of 6. When I was 6, my parents decided to move to Pretoria, where I grew up further, and I got my first job in Pretoria after I finished school. As with many people who enter the labor market in South Africa, eventually, well, oftentimes you eventually find yourself into the Johannesburg side, and then I moved to Johannesburg, and now I pretty much stay all over South Africa, depending on where the project or where the business needs me, right, in terms of my current role.
Yeah, and Darryl, tell us, what was your dream career when you grew up?
So funny enough, I come from a military family. My father was in the military for quite a few years, and so was his father and father, etc. So I wanted to join the military from a very early age. That was a big desire and dream of mine. I'm technically a foreign student, so I did Cambridge. I was educated at home, but I did the Cambridge curriculum. And I was very keen to go to the UK and join the British military after school. My father convinced me to first study and get a degree instead, saying that after I had qualified with the degree, then I could potentially look at joining the military. And his thinking was, and it made sense, is that if you are unfortunately injured or disabled, you can at least make good money and have a good career, in a wheelchair, versus not having an education and being in a wheelchair. So that made rational sense to me. And then before long, you're studying and then you're working, and then life evolves, and I guess I just eventually entered the world of financial services, and I'm still here today.
And Darryl, you studied, looking back at your university days, you studied at WITS, you studied strategic marketing at MEP, and you got a number of top awards, right? You earned the top student, top syndicate, top student at Cambridge, and you got on the dean's list. Can you tell us what's your best memory from your student years?
I'll tell you one example from high school days.
Yeah.
My father was born in Zambia. My mom was born in Zim, so there was very little Afrikaans spoken in my household growing up. And I struggled with Afrikaans as a language. And when I first started, academically, sort of applying myself for Afrikaans, I actually was failing in grade 10, or the year you turn 16. My marks were terrible, and I really didn't know what the solution was. So I decided to go to the library, and I took these books, these baby books, like these terribly immature children's books in Afrikaans. And I used to go to an Afrikaans teacher once a week, and I was 16 years old, and I'd go through these baby books. And I started with that, and I built myself up, and eventually I managed to pass Afrikaans with a B. And for me, it wasn't my best mark, but it was really just a reinforcement of, if you're willing to prostrate yourself, and you're willing to just really get stuck into something, you actually can achieve anything. I think my first Afrikaans mark was like 20-something%. It was terrible. And I guess that was a good lesson that I learned. It was a difficult journey for me, because the language didn't come naturally to me. But that was a highlight. I think finally getting that mark and knowing that I had passed. And then I think just the top team award at Wits Business School on one of the courses, I think standing with the team and knowing that we had achieved collectively from diverse backgrounds, from very different walks of life and industries and experiences and education levels, and standing there as a collective, that was quite encouraging and very satisfying.
Now, Darryl, I believe you started your career at Outsurance, and you then joined Discovery in 2012, right? And
correct, yeah, in May, yes.
And 10 years, I guess the 10-year anniversary is coming up.
Coming up, yes.
And looking at your LinkedIn profile, you've risen through the ranks. You had 8 promotions, if I counted correctly, at Discovery. You're in charge of distribution at Discovery Insure. What would you say was the key to your success, if there was any?
So maybe just one correction. Not all
Yeah.
of the role changes at Discovery were promotions. Some of them were lateral moves, along the same sort of management level, but very different roles nonetheless, very different outcomes and portfolios and stakeholders. I was quite fortunate because when I joined the Discovery Insure business, it had just recently launched. I think it was 10 months old. And I think timing is important sometimes when you can grow with the business. And I think when opportunity meets preparation, and you're willing to put in the hours and the effort, and you're blessed with a good team, and you're blessed with, with an opportunity in the market. The market was ripe for disruption. I think the market was ripe for what Discovery Insure had to offer. And I think there were various cards that fell in place. But there's an age-old saying. It's a little bit corny, but I really do live with it. But luck favors the prepared.
Right.
Generally, the more prepared you are, the more fortunate you are. When you study harder or you study earlier, you generally do better in the exam. You're lucky in the exam, right? When you know your stats, when you know the detail of your business, you generally luckier, so to speak, when you get asked questions and you can answer them. The point I'm trying to make is, and more statistically even, the more work you put into something and the more effort and attention, you're generally going to be more fortunate versus someone that's going to get up at, 7, 8 o'clock every morning, sit in traffic all day, be late for work, be completely behind on emails every morning, clock watch and leave the office at 4 o'clock. That person's probably not going to be as lucky or as fortunate or as advanced in their career over a 10-year cycle versus someone that's prepared. So I think there's a little bit of that at play.
So would you agree with the famous quote that was attributed to Julius Caesar, who's rumored to have said, "Fortis fortuna juvat," meaning fortune favors the brave?
It's something very similar. And I think it's one thing to be brave.
Yeah.
But you've also got to know how to be brave. I think if you look at some of those, and I know that you're an historian in a sense, if I look at what you've done some of your dissertations on.
That's right.
But very, very successful emperors and rulers and conquerors, they knew when to fight, they knew how to fight, they knew what troops to use, they knew the landscape. They knew when to hold back, they knew when to negotiate and not to fight. And I think, leaders, if you're going to be a successful leader these days, you've got to be close to the detail. I'm not saying you need to immerse yourself in necessarily operational detail if that's not your role, but you need to know the detail of your market, your stakeholders. You need to understand the environment in which your workers actually work, whether that's blue collar, whether that's financial services, whether that's mining. I think a successful executive or a successful manager, you need to know what it's like to work in your own team. Are your tools fit for purpose? Are the blades sharp? Because I'm pretty certain those Roman emperors that you've done your dissertations on, if those swords were blunt, if half the army didn't have swords and the other half didn't have shields, and they didn't have maps and they didn't have sight of Germania and all those other territories, I think we would have a very different textbook read on Roman civilization.
Definitely. And Darryl, looking back over your career and maybe also your student years and your early days, who would you say inspired you along your journey?
I look up to a few leaders. There's certain people that I've known, personally through my journey. I think, my first formal career, I've always worked. I've worked from the age of 12 in some form or shape. But my first formal career where I got a pay slip, as you mentioned, was the First Rand Short-Term Insurance Group, specifically initially Arturance, and then to another company within the holdings group. But there was a chap called Mickey Maharaj. He's now the Chief Operating Officer of Arturance. He was a phenomenal leader for me at the time. He met me when I was 18. And he really gave me some really good guidance. He was critical, but very honest, transparent, and he nudged me when needed. And I think, every 18, 19, 20-year-old needs someone like that. Burton Nyker, who also used to work at the same company, he's now the CEO of MyWay, very similar. And I was fortunate in that when I worked in their teams, as a young employee, they recognized, I guess, dedication and hard work with opportunity, even when statistically they probably shouldn't have given me certain roles, considering I was the youngest person at insurance at the time. So I was blessed, with people that were willing to take a chance with me, and were, academic in their own right, highly intelligent, analytical, and gave me a guideline to sort of develop my career against. And then, moving over to Discovery, we blessed with incredible talent. Every one of the managers that I've worked for here, Francois Theron, who's the deputy CEO, I reported to him in my first role when I joined in 2012, when he hired me. The CEO of Discovery Insure, Anton Ossip. These are incredibly bright people who are also very empathetic. Too often leaders who are often very intelligent and know what needs to be done aren't always good at getting it done. And it's good to have empathy for not just your staff or your team, but for the team as a collective, and also for your client base. You can't develop great products and great solutions if you're not empathetic to what the customer actually needs, what they're going through, whether that's emotionally with a pandemic or financially because of something else. And I think you've got to be in tune. I'll give you an example. When I first joined Discovery Insure, I was promoted to head of claims within about 3 months of joining the business, and it was a big project to in-house claims operations from an outsourced provider. And a lot of us used to work till 9, 10 o'clock every night in those early days, as one does in an emerging and growing business.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that Anton Ossip, our CEO at the time, he still is the CEO, but it was probably about 8, 9 o'clock at night, and there were a handful of claims consultants that were still working, catching up on their admin. And we had just recently rolled out a claim system. And I think with any new system, there's certain bugs, etc., that get ironed out. But he sat down in the call center on one of the call center chairs, pulled it up next to this claims consultant. It was a young lady, and he showed a genuine interest. This was 8, 9 o'clock. His kids and his wife were at home, and he said, "Take me through what you're doing. Show me the journey. How do you go about paying this claim or validating this claim?" And I think it's very rare for a CEO of one of South Africa's biggest financial services providers to sit down in the call center next to someone and pay interest at that level, at 9 o'clock at night. And that's always been a profound sort of manifestation of just the leadership at Discovery. There's genuine empathy and care. We work incredibly hard. But we work incredibly hard, not just for ourselves and our business, but for our staff and for the clients in which we serve, and very importantly, our brokers. Discovery was built off the back of the broker. About 72% of all Discovery Insure's business comes from an intermediary, so we're incredibly broker focused. Yeah. And you've got to be empathetic and sympathetic at times to all of those stakeholders to be an effective leader.
And Darryl, you play a big role in the insurance industry. You're the past president of the Insurance Institute, and I think today you're celebrating your 6th-year anniversary as a councillor, right?
Correct. Of the Institute of Gauteng, of the Gauteng Institute. Yeah.
Can you tell us now, as insurance is becoming more important every day, almost in our lives in this new world, can you tell us a little bit about the work of the Insurance Institute?
Absolutely. So the Insurance Institute is a non-profit organization. It's set up as a public benefit organization, a PBO, with with solid governance. It gets audited financials every year. There's an AGM. The members of the institute is the insurance industry. So the staff that would work for your insurance companies and reinsurance companies and brokerages, effectively are the members. And there's a democratic election of councillors every year at AGM. So the market basically appoints from the market who sits on the council and represents the council and the IIG's interests. And the mandate really of the council has been not just networking and bringing the industry together, but it's been about education and really empowering and enabling education towards insurance and financial services and leadership. It's been about pride and affiliation, just building the pride of the industry. there's also a strong transformation element. So if anyone looks at the IIG website, you'll see there's many courses on offer, from mentorships to, academic programs through previously Gibbs, now Henley Business School, to various programs. And there's a big transformation element where we focus specifically on having a very inclusive classroom and really giving opportunities to those that may, or who didn't have opportunities prior. And then we do some other amazing work where we've had academic programs and learnerships that were really focused specifically on impoverished neighborhoods, not just previously disadvantaged, but currently impoverished neighborhoods, where, we've taken these very young adults, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, taken them through a course, a year-long course, grounded them in insurance in terms of what insurance is about, on business etiquette, on professionalism. We've got them their regulatory exams, and we've guaranteed them employment in the industry. These were, some of these were people that lived in very informal housing arrangements, who barely had enough money to take public transport, and now they're working at some of the largest financial services companies in the world. So that's some of the stuff that the Institute does. And then there's the fun side. The IIG holds the biggest insurance event in Africa, the IIG annual dinner, where some years there's 1,800 people that sit down for dinner. And we celebrate the long members of the industry. We celebrate long service awards. And we get together to collaborate and engage, because it is a relationship-based industry. So that's in a nutshell, but I'm not going to do it justice. It's 110 years old, the Institute. And it's got an incredible team that drive the value forward.
Well, your post today on LinkedIn does tell the history, and I think does tell share some of the accomplishments and contributions of the industry. So Darryl, what would you say is driving you today?
It's a multifaceted answer, I think. If I think professionally, and just right now my role within Discovery, I guess, and the insurance industry, insurance is it's incredibly important for the sustainability of the economy, right? Insurance is there to hedge risk and to bridge, the risk that doesn't just face domestic or personal clients, but business. If you take the context of commercial insurance, if you just look at what happened with the riots in July, that were most unfortunate in Durban and Johannesburg. If you take what happened during COVID with so many companies that didn't have the right insurance cover at the time and went out of business, I think the last 2 years have shown the value of insurance is not just preferred; it's so necessary. You cannot live without it. And I think it's a blessing to be in an industry where you give back to society. This is not, I don't work for a company, or I don't work in a sector where, you're selling a product that gives people cancer, or is a product or a service that doesn't enable society. This enables society. Right. So that personally is motivating and encouraging. And I think we're scratching the surface of what we can unpack. 2/3 of all cars in South Africa are not insured. That's a massive number. 2/3 in South Africa are not insured. People don't know these stats. I think if you look at the growth in, if you look at the growth in the number of plans and buildings that are being constructed on municipalities versus the growth of property insurance premium, it doesn't stack up. So there's a massive uninsured market in South Africa specifically, which we as insurers and brokers need to solve for. We need to focus on access, on inclusive access to products that are relevant for the sectors. And I think there's a big opportunity there. And I guess I'll give you a small example of what excites me, in that, I work for Discovery, where we're not just an insurer, but we're an insurer that focuses on the risks of today. Because, there's some companies arguably that probably offer the same product that they did 30 years ago. The nature of risk is very different. If I just take now post-pandemic, we've got situations where, for one of the few times in history, for some cars, you can actually sell them now that they're pre-owned for more than what you bought them for 2 years ago, just because there's not enough new cars in the market, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if you're a client who's insured your car for the book value of the car for, say, 100,000 Rand, for certain cars, if you want to go to a dealership, you're going to be spending 110, 115,000 Rand for the same car, so you're out of pocket. Right. We at Discovery Insure, we saw this a while back. That's why we bought things like, retail value booster. So our clients that have that benefit get an automatic 15% above what the book value is of the car. So that's so relevant now, post the COVID pandemic, or having the ability to offer extended car hire terms. These are just some things that excite me where, people that don't pay attention to their cover, I think are going to be left in sticky situations over the next couple of months and years, because COVID has changed everything. It's changed everything from a customer perspective when you consider things, even like panel beating times. I know it's a bit of an odd example, but with less ships on the sea or less containers on the sea, countries aren't getting the parts that they used to in the same time frames. Now, panel beating costs are going up. Time frames for repairs are delayed, and there's so much pressure on the industry. But it's for us as insurers to solve. And I think with rich data and sort of data lakes like we at Discovery have, I think we've got the competitive advantage, especially with the telematics data, on how do we create really rich solutions, to our customers out there, because it's a saturated market, and I'm excited about how much more we can do.
Now, Darryl, looking into the future, as a leader of one of the most innovative insurance companies in the world, what does the future of leadership mean to you?
I think the principles of leadership don't necessarily change. Leaders need to be accessible. Leaders need to have a vision. I think no soldier, to your earlier analogy, no soldier wants to follow, a general into battle if they don't know where the battle is, what the route is, what are they fighting for. And I think leaders need to be effective communicators, and they need to demonstrate that vision. They need to demonstrate that journey and what success looks like. That doesn't change. The challenge, though, I think, with leadership is that because there's so much more going on in the world, there seem to be more and more balls to juggle. There seem to be just more moving parts. We as leaders, I think, need to multitask better. We need to have better controls. We need to have, better management processes. I think if we're going to continue at the same level of success as maybe what we did 4 or 5 years ago, I think arguably there was just less uncertainty and risk to manage, right? So there's definitely that. And I think, leaders need to stay abreast of what's current. I think leaders need to continue to read. I'm not saying necessarily continuing to always formally study, but continuing to stay what's topical in the sort of macroeconomic market. What's happening, not just politically, but what's happening, in financial circles. What's happening, what are the trends, what's happening in tech. Tech is a massive gap I see in leadership these days, where there's many leaders that don't actually have a basic understanding of where technology is going to, the impact of digitalization, right. The pros and cons of cryptocurrency and what's happening there, whether you believe in it or not, but how is it impacting the world economy? These are things which many leaders surprisingly aren't aware of. And I think those are some of the gaps that holistically, and I'm stereotyping, but leaders need to close if they're going to continue being successful.
And Darryl, what have you learned from your own journey that you consider most important for building future leaders and for empowering future leaders?
So there needs to be activity. There needs to be an action somewhere. I think, too often humanity often does a lot of talking. Conceptually, I think we all have great ideas. We should do A, B, and C, but effectively, if you're going to create sustainability or continuity, there needs to be some action. There needs to be a process. There needs to be a structure, a chassis. And I think it's incumbent on every leader to understand what is their own continuity plan. One day I may get hit by a bus, or I may not. One day I'm not going to be in my current role. There's a responsibility on me specifically, in saying, well, how do I build continuity either within my own team or lateral teams that someone can step in and do a far better job than me. And it's a tough job, right? It's tough to build someone up to do the job better than you, but that's effectively, I think, what needs to happen. And that takes activity in terms of people need to get close to the people that they work with and for, if they're to identify sort of leadership potential. I don't think everyone is as close as what they should be to colleagues professionally, and I think COVID hasn't helped that. It's tough when you've been behind Zoom for 2 years, but I think that's changing, and there's been a lot more work, come back to work initiatives around various sectors. But getting closer to one's colleagues and one's stakeholders, having definitive development plans in place, and those could be wide. mentorships, to formal studies, to shadowing programs, to job rotation, to job enrichment. There's so many different, sort of outcomes, but something needs to actually happen. You can't sit in a boardroom and say we should do mentorships. Like, someone needs to walk out that boardroom and put the mentorship in place, advertise it, and hold interviews,
Right.
and make sure that it happens, and do progress updates, and check on the development, and do surveys. And so I think the point I want to make is that there needs to be activity. And there's amazing companies, and there's many phenomenal leaders that do exactly that. We need to scale it though, because I think with anything, every issue in South Africa or on the sort of continent or just globally, I think a lot of our problems could be solved with effective and decisive leadership. And I say decisive because leaders sometimes, well, not sometimes, leaders have to make the calls.
Right.
Sometimes even if they're unpopular, but what I've realized is, even if it's an unpopular decision, it becomes a lot less unpopular when it's clearly understood. Unpopular decisions remain unpopular when they're vague, ambiguous, and people don't know why. And it comes down to a communication sort of problem then again.
And Darryl, when you address future leaders, aspiring leaders, maybe even your own children, what is it you tell them about social media? How should they navigate social media to build their own leadership brand?
It's a fascinating question. And I think to be completely transparent, I have some development areas, I think, when it comes to fully utilizing social media. I'm still of the sort of age group when Facebook was relatively common and popular. It's sort of LinkedIn and Facebook remain my sort of two main platforms. LinkedIn more for obviously professionally, and Facebook more for socially. It's obviously very important these days in having an integrated sort of marketing strategy, whether that's for a company or a brand, but for yourself personally. And I think too often people aren't integrated. Some people aren't on any sort of social media, and that may be fine in their type of role. But I think if you're going to be an effective CEO or a senior manager these days, you need to have a public presence of some sort. I mean, if I just look at what's happening within the leadership team that I'm fortunate to work with, but I think if you look at what Adrian Gore and all of the sort of group CEOs, Anton Ossip, Desh Govender, all of these guys on how active they are on LinkedIn specifically, and the amount of thought-provoking conversations that develop, and the amount of identification of critical areas to get people talking about the right things that matter in society and risk and healthcare and mortality, and just making the world a better place. There's definitely value add there. So my advice to my children, although I can't tell them that now because they only turned 2 years, our twins turned 2 years in a month from now, but say 10 years from now, I'll definitely make sure that I probably get the lessons on just what's current, what's relevant, how to navigate social media safely. I think because of just the known risks out there, and how to be effective in building your own brand digitally. I mean, it's imperative.
And Darryl, these are challenging times. So what is your advice for future leaders in terms of challenges? What are some of the biggest challenges future leaders should expect in their career and should prepare for?
So I think if I just look at the South African context, we've still got a big challenge. I mean, it doesn't really matter what market you're in. We've got a big unbanked market. We've got a big uninsured market. And we've got a financial literacy issue in South Africa. If you just take financial literacy overall, I think there's, relative to the population size, I don't think enough people understand the value of having a bank account, having an insurance product, having investments, having health insurance. And that's a systemic issue, because it means that from a sustainability perspective and continuity perspective, there's gaps and there's risks. And it translates when people want to become entrepreneurs and open their own business. There's 60-70% of startups eventually fail, oftentimes for insurable issues. Like business interruption is a product taken under commercial insurance policy. Business interruption is one of the top 5 reasons why SMEs go bankrupt. You can pay a premium and get cover for it. So I think just some of the challenges are systemic in terms of what I've mentioned. So financial literacy. How do you, in financial services at least, how do you show value to a market that doesn't necessarily see the value naturally based on their upbringing or exposure, etc. I think unemployment remains a big issue. So even if you've got an amazing value proposition, you know, how do you how do you get to the net consumer if you've got 23, 24 million people that are unemployed, or whatever the number is based on the market you're in. You know, it's a big issue in building up not just, you know, employment for employment's sake, but building up our tax base. You know, our tax base in South Africa is very exposed to a handful of people that are employed in the companies. And these are challenges that are systemic. We need more entrepreneurs, we need more job providers, we need people that are going to grow the employment and tax base, and we need financial literacy. And I think if we as business, the private and the public sector, can collectively tackle those macro issues, you sit with a very different market, not just in terms of commercial terms, but a very different labor market. You sit with a very different type of person that's employable, which creates massive opportunities. So now that's something I'm passionate about too. You know, just how do you enable education at a grassroots level to unlock just what we can and must achieve in South Africa.
Now, Darryl, talking about the education of the future, if you were to design a curriculum for future leaders, what are some of the new skills you would want to factor in?
I didn't hear the question. Sorry, what are some of the?
What are some of the new skills you would want to factor in for the curriculum of the future?
That's a great question. So there's certain items that remain, you know, important. I think from the beginning of time. I think every leader should have a good grip of just financials. I think if you know, whether you're a CEO, whether you're a branch manager or a divisional manager, I think every leader should know, you know, what drives their income and what drives their costs. I think that's important, and I still see some leaders today who, you know, if you're not sure how really an income statement works, or a balance sheet works, or a budget works, you're probably going to have limited capability in scaling your leadership effectively and sustainably. So, you know, some sense of financial understanding, just understanding the sort of digital space, and digital is broad, but what I mean is, you know, what's happening in the world of e-commerce, you know, with a lot more markets now going online versus, you know, in-shop purchases, you know, irrespective of whether you're buying a financial product or a tangible product, there's a lot more digital distribution going on. What if you're an intermediary and that's disrupting you? I mean, look what happened to travel agents in the UK, etc. You know, you need to be aware of how digital may disrupt your industry, but more importantly, how can you use digital to build your specific role in that industry? You know, if you take brokering in South Africa, personal lines is seeing a more digital, online and sort of telephonic based distribution model emerging. So traditional brokers could do nothing and say, well, you know, I'm not going to change. But what we're seeing is the more progressive brokers are saying, well, I'm going to now go digital too. Even though I'm an intermediary, I can still deliver my value digitally. I can still, you know, go straight to the market digitally or via a telephonic contact center, whatever the case may be. So that's just a simple example of, you know, the guys need to stay abreast of what's impacting, you know, the world in terms of digital and distribution specifically in that model. And then thirdly, I think too often many leaders and many companies don't pay enough attention to distribution. There's a saying, he who owns distribution wins, or she who owns distribution wins, right? You need to be able to distribute your product to someone or something. And I think too often people don't understand the supply chain and the net impact of getting that delivery to the market. And you know, I wasn't raised in a sales environment, but I'm in a hardcore distribution role now. There are two types of people: those that work in sales and those that support sales. And it's important that irrespective of the level or the role or the mandate of the employee or the leader, that must be understood. Because if you're not going to put revenue on your income statement, you don't have a business.
Absolutely. Now, Darryl, in terms of your industry leadership, I believe you're also the founding chair of the insurance Young Guns, right? So having mentored many future leaders, especially in your industry, can you maybe share a success story or two where you met an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
Sure. So, I mean, it was a collective. It was similar to the Insurance Institute in the sense that it was a non-profit organization, but it was focused really on the young, emerging, sort of under 35-year-olds in the industry. And there were quite a few individuals that were a part of that founding sort of process and body. And that organization still exists today. I've moved on from the sort of leadership side of that, but it still exists to bring young talent in the insurance sector together. Because, and I'm stereotyping, but the insurance industry is relatively older aged if you look at the average age in the market. So there were fewer younger people in the market. And I guess there's a continuity risk to that, because eventually there comes a stage where who's going to be the talent and who's going to be the managers and the leaders of tomorrow in the industry. So that was a big sort of ambition of that institute in creating continuity and knowledge transfer, because as the older people in the industry are retiring, they need to be able to transfer that knowledge down. And that provided a sort of segment to do that to. So I have a few mentees, to answer your question. I have a few mentees, some within Discovery and some via the Insurance Institute of Gauteng. I've had some phenomenal experiences. There's some mentees that put more effort into it than others, I think, like anything in life. But my last mentee from last year, he had an ambition to purchase a property. He didn't know too much about property, and just the costs associated and financing it and just taxation, etc. And that became one of his non-professional sort of goals for the year, and it was very, very satisfying and somewhat emotive for me when he bought his first property towards the end of last year, on our journey. And then I've had some examples where mentees have personal issues. They're great at work, they're doing well, but they have issues either with family or, I had one mentee that really wanted to lose weight. It was eating well, but wasn't really exercising, and watched a lot of TV. And the one day I got a bit tired of hearing the moaning, and I called him at 5 a.m. and he was a bit annoyed. And I said, well, you can stay looking the way you are. You can put on some running shoes and go for a run. And he took it well. And, within the next sort of 6 months, he lost 7 kilos. So I've had some pretty cool experiences, I think, in the mentee-mentor relationship. But then there's also reverse mentorship. I've learned a lot from them, in terms of digital, what's trending currently in sort of the younger generation. There's a heck of a lot that you can learn from your mentee too when you're mentoring. And because a mentorship relationship should be quite vulnerable and honest and transparent, at least that's the way I structure mine. There's no taboo topics. You should say something as it is, like it is, and in reverse too. And I think that's been quite fascinating. Some of the stuff that I've unlocked for myself.
And I believe, Darryl, you're in a good position to give fitness advice, because according to your LinkedIn profile, you are a gym enthusiast, right?
I used to play a lot of soccer as a child, but the older I got, there's less time to be on a soccer field. So I do exercise every day. Okay. It's healthy, and it helps just to minimize stress and stay focused. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, Darryl, you mentioned the people who inspired you early on. Looking back over your leadership journey, are there maybe any role models of leadership that you would suggest future leaders should study and maybe learn from?
Yeah, so I think, and I can probably give any name here, and every name you'll have pros and cons, and you'll have people for and against them. I think, I would have to mention, our ex-president Nelson Mandela. I think just what he stood for, what, the choices he had, the mandate and the power that he had in his hands, and how he exercised the decisions he made, which weren't always popular at the time. Having read his books, including The Long Walk to Freedom, and just getting a sense of the man, the boy who became the young man, who became the man, who became the freedom fighter, who became, the patriarch of South Africa, in a sense. I must say there's a lot that most people can take out of reading up on Nelson Mandela. And I myself was emotionally moved at times, just going into the detail of the man. And more importantly, knowing that, he believed fervently in what he stood for, but he was an effective communicator. He was able to get people to make very unpopular decisions, but they were the right decisions. And that is leadership at the end of the day. You can't always be popular. You can't always take the easy way out and agree with the masses. That's not the role. Otherwise, we wouldn't need leaders, right? And I think just in terms of our group chief executive, Adrian Gore, I think if you look at what he's achieved, starting Discovery when he was a young actuary. I think he's around 26 when he left Liberty, and building this business what it is today. Where we've got over 10,000 employees around the world servicing millions of clients, in over 25 countries. And it's not just about the commercial term, it's not just about our financial results. When you look at the value, when you look at how on Discovery Insure, we've got 40% lower fatality rates on our client base, our road fatality rates. When you look at our vitality members, where they have a far higher life expectancy than the average in the population. When you look at the value that's given back through Discovery Bank, it's to work for a company that's been built by a leader that inspires you to make South Africa, make the world different but better, and more sustainable. I think that's somewhat special, and I think we're blessed to have Adrian in the sense that he's also a remarkable communicator, incredibly intelligent, and it helps when those two are combined, because that generally keeps the ship in the right direction, and it keeps the ship moving incredibly fast. And it keeps the ship relevant, right? The cabins can be used, which is important.
Absolutely. Now, Darryl, how can our listeners connect with you, and where should they follow you?
So on LinkedIn would probably be the natural route. I have a LinkedIn profile. I think that's more appropriate for people that want to engage professionally. I do post occasionally on LinkedIn. So if I do any sort of media interview or any coverage, if I write an article, I generally would post it there. And then I do sort of various engagements for sort of the insurance publications like FA News, Cover, and those publications. But yeah, I'm happy to engage with people on LinkedIn if they have any sort of queries or insights into what has worked and what hasn't worked for me over the years. There's many things and lessons that I've learned where I could have done things differently too.
Thank you. And Darryl, last but not least, what is your advice for the millions of kids out there who are now finishing school this year or maybe next year, who are looking to start their career, to enter the world of work? What are maybe one or two success factors that they should consider?
So I'll address the stereotypes. I think don't be entitled. I think too often younger kids these days or younger adults, have developed a sense of entitlement where, the world doesn't work where you can sort of get to work at 9 and leave at 4 and be the CEO in 2 years. It doesn't happen. But that sometimes does appear their expectation with some of the younger people entering the workforce. There's value in cutting your teeth and earning your stripes. There's value in hard work. There's value in working hard but smartly. And this is when you start working, that's the growth stage of your career. You shouldn't be, in my view, and that's just my view, but you shouldn't be leaving the office at 4 or 5 o'clock when you're 80, 90 years old. You should make sure that you're ahead of every single one of your peers. You should make sure that you know your business inside out. You should be asking your leadership and your colleagues, where can you add more value? Where can you learn? Where can you help them? And something that really worked for me, it worked when I was still working at at Archerons back in the day, is offering to do reports and writing reports for forums or management committees that were above my mandate. So if you write the report for your manager or your head of department, all of a sudden it ticks a couple of boxes. You're further getting insight into the bigger picture of what you operate. You're learning how to communicate effectively on a corporate and professional level. You're also showing that you're willing to get your hands dirty, because actually not many people like writing reports. And it's an amazing development tool. It's just one example of things that younger people can offer to do. Never moan without coming with a solution, because that's called whining. Nothing wrong with saying something's wrong, something's broken. In fact, you should. But on the other hand, come with potential solutions. Always be solutions orientated. We wouldn't have jobs if there weren't problems, right? Our job is generally to create opportunities and fix problems. That's why people are employed. So I would make that point, that don't whine and be solutions orientated. And I think also for the younger generation, it's okay to move backwards if you're going to move forwards. So as an example, if you've really learned everything you can in a specific division or area, sometimes it's all right to take a lateral move. You don't always have to go up. Or sometimes it's all right to take a lateral move, even if you earn a little bit less money, but you're going to get far more experience. because experience pays. And I think when you scale that 10, 15, 20 years from now, you're probably going to be a lot more successful, and you're probably going to be earning more than someone who just stayed in a cushy job that they knew very well and did nothing else. So don't be too penny wise and pound foolish by always chasing the dollar. You know, you can take a step back for growth and exposure. Education, it's important. Keep learning. If you don't have access to formal education, look for bursaries. Read at least. You know, stay close to the news 24 publications. What's relevant in your market. Be close to the industry publications. Don't go to bed, ever, unless you've learned something new that day. Otherwise, it's, in my view, it's a bit of a waste. Grow your knowledge base. And I think importantly, Dr. Nick, pass it forward. I think when people are committed and they eventually do well, there's an onus on them to pass it forward and to unlock and create opportunity for further generations or their peers, and to help those that struggle. It's not just about karma, and it's not just about doing the right thing, but there's value in passing it forward. There's value not just commercially, but I think for society as a whole. So that would be a few tips that I'd give.
Well, Darryl, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom into the future of leadership, and reminding us that paying it forward not only benefits the industry, it benefits the greater community, and in your case, certainly benefits a lot of upcoming leaders.
Thank you very much.